I'm DJ.
And I'm Andrew.
Welcome to One Shot Tavern.
A TTRPG podcast where we seek out new ways to tell your stories through different systems and games. And today, we're talking to some of my favorite creators out there, Jack Panic of Dungeon Club and Cameron Stripmatter of The Panic Table. Thank you guys so much for being with us today. I'm excited to not only just talk to you guys, because y'all are wonderful, but you have an exciting project coming up. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I got to meet Cameron by way of Jack through a game that Jack ran of Eat the Reich. Fabulous game, super fun. It was my first experience with Jack as a dungeon master and with Cameron playing a game. We had some good laughs. It wasn't even streamed.
It was just for funsies.
It was just a game.
Just for funsies.
You mean people
Sometimes
play
you gotta
games
play
for fun?
Yeah.
And
Not everything is content.
And it was a blast. And then that kind of gave me a little bit of insight into how Jack runs games. So Jack, a little bit about you. You run games professionally and you make dope stuff in terms of like system agnostic. I think you call them like oddities, trinkets, toys, little things to use in your games. You make those, you put them out on TikTok a lot of the time. And then you've got a Patreon for some of the more premier level of that, correct?
Actually, the Patreon is just a collection of everything
that
I've made. Yeah, so it's just one place to download it. And once a PDF I've made has some shelf life, they just move there and they become free to download for my Patreon.
That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah,
But if you're like me, I just screenshot his TikTok like some sort of peasant.
Hey, long press to download, baby. I haven't taken the download off.
That's really classy. I didn't even know that about you. Jack. Wow.
Jack, you go heavy into this kind of like retro, like sci-fi sometimes, like 80s aesthetic, synthwave kind of stuff, which makes your content really clickable, evocative. It's why I found you in the first place. Getting into content creation and making these little tools is actually something I've been wanting to talk about with you for a while because I want to do more of that. That's why DJ and I both did Kickstarters back in February because we wanted to have put something out. That being said, we went a little bigger than you might do on an average day. So there's that. And then Cameron, if you've been listening for a while, we did an episode with the Panic Table. It was incredible. It's one of the most fun that I've had. Just recording an actual play episode with a guest. It was a blast, and your production on your set for Unaccompanied Minors is absolutely insane. It's beautiful. It is a full-on sci-fi set table. It hits those marks. I string all that together to say you guys like making immersive experiences. So let's talk about making an immersive experience at the table or the desktop for people online. How did you guys both first get into that level of rather than just running a game, but like adding something a little bit more onto it, props, whatever it might be? Well, Cameron, I'll throw it to you.
Sure. I noticed, especially just as a latecomer to the actual play scene, because we just sort of popped out of the weed with the Panic Table, just kind of from nowhere. There's so much space for the friends hanging around, having a low-key podcast while making a actual play show, but it's saturated with that, right?
Yeah.
And so what's harder to do, and what was really tempting was like, oh, okay, so the bar is reachable. I'm not going to say low because it's not easy, but it's within reach to make something that's more focused and stands out a little better. The heart of this, right, is people just want to watch a show with people they feel like they'd probably be friends with, and you can just have on listening to them joke around in the background. Like that's a really important factor, but I just noticed that there was a whole lot of that and not a whole lot of like really focused genre work. Maybe I don't even know if that's the right term for it, but that was the bar. We were like, all right, let's hit that. Let's set something that sets us apart from just friends on couches, even though we were friends and we weren't on couches. And so, yeah, and just little stuff. I mean, honestly, I was just talking with Alan Girding of Tuesday Night Games yesterday, and we were talking about this exact question of like how to create immersion and stuff. And he's like, honestly, when I'm running a horror game and I actually want it to be vibes on vibes, I check it with the table first, make sure it's the kind of game people want to play.
But I bring in a real dead body.
But But I lock the door and I pull out an actual gun. No, uh, no,
You're
he
going to be afraid.
they don't.
That's a direct quote.
He takes away the snacks and uh, just a small touch like that, where suddenly
Rude.
it's not a chill hang. Like you're there, focused, just like a more because I'm used to just. And I try not to do it on the panic table. We had like little like LaCroix holsters under the table itself that I would stick from time to time. Yeah, they're back. But yeah, it's on a really banal sort of boring side of things. I think immersion starts with intention, and so going in with a group of people who agree to chase a feeling is how that starts, right? I've had a lot of experience running games that I wish were spooky with people who just wanted to have a chill game night, and that the work. You can't
No,
be
not
like,
at all.
oh, my nightmare scenario where everyone is like, I thought we were gonna play Twister, bro. What's going on? So
Yeah.
so that's my experience. Jack, what about you?
I've been running games for the majority of my adult life. The first thing I did when I dropped out of college was learn D&D. And Pathfinder 1 actually. If we're keeping track. But so for years it was just about the immersion was just about getting the people who were in my life who were willing to play with me to be excited to play with me and convert them into people who would play wanted to play, who were like begging to play. So I used to just make a ton of stuff from hand. I used to make giant cardboard. I would just take all my Amazon boxes, fold them up, make towers and things to put on the table and maps that were revealed. They were not like great crafts, but they were crafted and it was very fun. I got a 3D printer one year and we did all the minis at 200%. So they were these massive,
Fun.
kind of like Game of Thrones, you know,
That's
the war
awesome.
table. And then I got a giant grid and instead of it being 5-foot spaces, we did 4x4 squares. And then we had these massive pieces. And when we 3D print the boss, we'd kill him, we put him up on a shelf. So I always felt like trinkets and things to look at. And then the pandemic happened and I started playing online exclusively. And I started playing professionally. And then it just became about visual assets. I don't do a lot of like minis and maps, but I do like a lot of like scenic. I mean, I love concept art.
Yeah.
You just go through Pinterest and just grab concept art after concept art and put it together. And so much to the point now where so much of my prep is literally just making mood boards.
Yeah.
It's less about like writing things and more about finding things I like and going, I'm going to put that in my game. And then I started running games at a local bar down the street. Shout out Rad Bar. It's a rad bar. That was where the original Dungeon Club was. The Dungeon Club was an actual club.
Whoa.
It was the only thing I did for like community. It was like I was running all these paid games, and I do love my paid games, and they're their own beautiful thing. But I wanted something that was just kind of like hanging out, like having a good
Yeah.
time. I wanted to run Morkborg, and I wanted to run Liminal Horror, and I wanted to run like little games, and I had the people there, and then I started doing like, how do I get people's attention when we're drinking beer and we had this cool little room with an arcade room they set aside for us. And so I started bringing my projector and I started having all these videos when we ran Liminal Horror. I had all these great like found footage things on
That's
loop
awesome.
projecting over me. So as I was standing there looming over the
Ooh.
table, I had this glow on top of me. For me, immersion is not necessarily about making sure we're always on the same page. It's just about having people's attention.
Yeah.
Right. It's about keeping their focus on the story, even if you're cutting up, even if you're having fun or having snacks or whatever. It's about them like shoveling the shit out of their face so they can like, oh, it's my turn. I'm very excited to play. And that to me is
Yeah.
immersion.
Well, and I think when I first took the dive into making my game more than just a whiteboard with a grid and maybe minis, right? Like maybe it was like some Halloween game that I had lined up. We had been running Curse of Strahd for a while. It was I have some younger brother-in-laws, so it was like their friend group, and I was like, I'm getting all of you nerds into D&D. And so it was just like I was forcing them all to play, and then they fell in love, and now they don't stop, and it's great. They're all my little nerd babies. But it was basically that game where I was like, y'all are gonna get into this, and I know you'll love it because I need players. And so we did it. We ran it for a couple months, and then Halloween was coming around. I'm like, all right, I can't just run a Halloween game. Like, it's Curse of Strahd. Like, I have to make it a thing. And so, like I put up like some curtains around the stairwell going into my basement and did a bunch of
Cool.
candles and,
Yeah.
and then I looked at my stupid whiteboard on my table and I went, damn it. Like I was like, ugh, like that's still not it. And so like I, went and grabbed some cardboard boxes, like what you're saying, Jack, and ended up making like the Babala Saga hut, this walking tree house
Sure.
thing, and looked terrible, but like I was like, this
Well,
is it.
it's not the quality of the thing though. Most of
Yeah.
the time, especially at a home game,
Right.
when you're playing with your friends, it's the I put time and attention into this,
Yeah.
and look at and have a thing to look at, so that you're not tempted to look at your phone when there's a lull in conversation. No, that sounds
Yeah.
very
And
dope.
that
And
put
I should say
me,
for the record, I don't like minis. Like I don't run games with. I've just never
yeah.
really.
I'm a mini
Um,
painter. I don't do it nearly as much as I used to. 2020 changed a lot of gaming in general for us, but like
We took this call anyway.
right? I know it's horrible.
I think minis are. I should clarify. I think minis are fun.
Yeah.
I think they're an important part of the hobby. I just don't. They slow down my
I don't
process
use them
when I'm
anymore.
running games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I paint. I here's the real thing that's gonna make everybody leave the call. I paint Warhammer now, and I don't really play Warhammer. I paint it.
Dude, we
really
gotta play.
likes
We
it.
gotta play Soulbound at some point.
Ooh.
It is so good.
Yeah?
It's so good.
So I never really got to do the prop thing in person. I got to play with Andrew's props when I was his player. But anytime I had like run Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that, it was always very much just like theater of the mind, sit down. But like now that I'm like all digital, I use Tailspire, which, for those who don't know what Tailspire is, it is like The Sims for D&D map making. So like I download my little Hero Forge minis into it, and then like I build up my maps if there isn't one available, but usually there's something available from the community that's like a million times better than I could ever put like
And then you
any
stick your
effort
minis
into.
in the pool, delete the ladder, or watch them struggle, and
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Then set the
so-
rug on fire near the fireplace, and then they get
Yep.
out of the bed, but they're naked.
and that's Curse of Strahd.
That's Curse of that really is Curse of Strahd. So for me, that's like, the immersive storytelling that I do, and I think it is really immersive. But some of the stuff that you guys are doing is amazing.
Yeah. So all that to say, look, we love crazy cool ways to elevate our games. And, Jack, you've been making supplemental content for a while now that's like,
Like
hey, here's a
daily.
roller table. Yeah. Man. First off, yeah, actually, let's start there. How do you do so much so frequently? And then
Jack,
how does
how
that...
do you do so much so frequently? I don't even know this. How do you do it?
Well, the real answer is I have a very supportive partner. My wife
Oh.
is super, super supportive. So, if you have the ability to have the people who are in your life prioritize the things that you want to prioritize, it's much easier to create. But the other answer is just a persistent drive to not think about anything else ever. Before I was running games professionally, I was a mess because I just wanted to talk about these ideas I had, and I had no one to share them with consistently. The other side of that is like instant gratification and the one to be loved. I made one graphic and it got some views, and I said I'm going to chase that dragon. I'm never letting it go. And then there was about 6 months where I had to really say to my wife Tara, to be like, hey, this is I got to do this. It's got to happen. And if I don't continue to ride this thing, I bet the algorithm won't care about me anymore. So for a while, I just treated it like a full-time job that I wasn't getting paid for. I think that if I'd always wanted to do like Lore 24 or Dungeon 23. I always wanted to do one of these big writing exercises. And if you've ever read the book The Artist Way, one of the most important parts of like that doctrine of creative pursuit is to just have your time to write, and then you take that shit and you throw it away, right? So I started thinking about the stuff I was putting on the internet. For years, I've always wanted to like spin my wheels. I want to make the best thing. I want to focus all my energy on the best thing. And instead, I said, you know what? I'm just gonna put stuff out there,
Yeah.
warts and all, spelling errors and all. I'm just gonna throw the stuff out there, and and all I really want is for people to be excited, to play with my toys.
Awesome.
I just really want to influence people's creative process in a way that makes them feel excited to go back to their table and to try new things.
I truly
Fantastic.
believe that Jack and I found each other because we both suffered
Yeah.
deeply from something I call Wonka disorder. Like some people, like they watch the kids follow Gene Wilder into that land made of candy, and they're like, "This can only go poorly." But I think to both of us, we're like, "This checks out. This makes sense."
Let's start to kind of like get into the Voidstream stuff. But in order to do that, I think we need to start with a question I have about Moonbeam. Because I've been seeing it pop up ever since everybody else saw it pop up through a few different creators, and I had no idea what Moonbeam was. Since Voidstream is part of the Moonbeam collection, I believe was the phrasing. What do you got?
Moonbeam project was tremendously exciting for the parent table because it arrived at a time where we had just finished our completely free on YouTube and had landed at the well, now what phase. Just
Yeah.
a lot of time and energy, 10 episodes of content. We weren't, I mean, without any sort of, we're not going to be able to do that again for at least a year, like scale and scope. And so, right as a friend of mine connected me to going through and he took a look at our stuff and he was like, "Hey, would you consider being one of our first realms, which is what they call their channel on
Yeah.
Moonbeam?" And I was like, "Cool, yeah. What's Moon?" And
What's a
mo-
realm?
it was like, "Bro, I'll step into any realm, but the simplest, the most elegant pitch was, oh, Moon Twitch, except you make money." And I thought that was really ballsy and very interesting. And so
Tell me more.
they're doing a lot of really interesting things, uh, and seem to be coming from a deeply human point of intention. I think it really came from a place for them. I've seen most of their product demos at this point, and for them, it was noticing the deal with YouTube and Twitch when they were built decades
Yeah.
ago. At this point, we had a different understanding of what the internet was, of what community looked
Oh
like
yeah.
on the internet, and so you now, 20 years later, have these systems built on the backs of individuals. So channels are named after certain people, and I think it's built into the streamer lifestyle now. You run, burnout, post a video, say, "Here's why I'm leaving," and then you use that to get back on the train eventually. But uh, it's just this really destructive cycle, and so they've restructured it around their realm where you can actually have infrastructure that is a channel that isn't your name, that isn't you, so that you can create housing and that your discoverability remains viable even if you as a person are appearing on different realms. So it feels a lot more like TV in the
Yeah.
throwback kind of way.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's cool, but yeah, their big thing is that discoverability won't blow like it does on Twitch, where you're like, if you're not in the top 5%, you might as well not try. Um,
Right.
and so that's the theory anyway. They're also doing a lot of really fabulous stuff with moderation and intelligent filtering tools and all that kind of stuff. But they've got a whole product demo you can check out on their site.
Yeah.
But they'd come out. Hey, we'd love for the Panic Table to be one of our first realms. You're colorful, you're kooky, you're spooky, and we said thank you. Yes. Part and parcel with teaming up with them was that they offered us the opportunity to create a backer kit campaign to jive with their big release, which we did on backer kit. So that's how Voidstream. Wait, we've been already kicking around a few. I don't, Jack. Had we talked about Voidstream prior to Moonbeam being a thing? I don't even remember.
We had talked about a couple of different like ideas just for projects to like. I think it was nothing that Dale like. It was. I think we were just talking about collaborating on
It
some
truly
ideas.
looked like me like at 2 in the morning messaging Jack on TikTok with just a list of like ideas, like, okay, ATSTs, but they're powered by chicken. And Jack would be like, okay, yeah, maybe. N- NFTs equal children? Question mark. I don't know, just weird stuff like that. And Jack would be like, cool, maybe.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
we can do that.
All right, so let's
Sure.
let's go from the top now. You guys have Voltroned around Panic, and you've got a campaign that you're building out. What's the problem you're trying to solve, and what'd you do to solve it?
For us, it's a multitude of things, but I think the core concept of what we're trying to like put in front of people is that we have tools at our disposal that allow us to change how we game. We have more technology has made connecting to people cheaper, easier. It has made producing things, the way you present things, more interesting. And what we really want are to make tools that allow people who are trying to play games specifically in the horror genre, specifically right now for Mothership, just because it's a fantastic system made by fantastic people. But what we really want is are tools that a game warden can use to really help with the immersion, right? So 10 audio tracks full of little clues, tidbits, tasty transmissions from lost satellites, unregistered contacts with strange anomalies, and also videos that have, evocative, not highly produced, but also they have this wonderful found footage aesthetic. So it's the filmmaking is almost a subtle part of the tool as opposed to like the feature of it. And using those things in a way that allows a game master to look at it and say, what do I run tonight? And how do I want to show these things? And just the idea, I think that Cameron pitched me was like, what if you could see the monster?
Yeah.
What if you could feel the tension and experience it? And when you're trying to emulate horror is it's a cinematic space to begin with. So honestly, when he pitched the idea, I was like, well, that makes the most sense. Most people just don't have the tool sets or the resources to actualize that. So, we like the idea of these videos that have little strange things in them that are subtly highlighted through the cinematography. That then, when you look at your players after you've showed them, the security footage of the escaped convict or whatever, that they go, what was he doing with the cigarettes? And then you say, oh, you mean the cigarettes that are sitting on the console over there in the room? And give people these moments of being able to throw themselves into something and then pull it back into the game. And then beyond that, with the 10 audio and the 10 video, we're also crafting an adventure that we want to be able to use all of those things as a remixable tool set. So it's an adventure we're calling SOS, Source of Signal, and it's this delve into this long abandoned, because it's Mothership's is the future. This long abandoned public access station that's in the quarantine area of old wine country in old California, and the signal is wreaking havoc on people's video tech and on the airwaves and on Wi-Fi. And a team is sent in to figure out what's making these these problems. But what's cool is that you're going to go into this game, and all of it's laid out in a way. It will all be laid out in a way that you'll be able to go, okay, what videos am I going to use this time? What audios am I going to use this time? Here are the places that I can use them in these different rooms, different locations, and then we can remix the locations to kind of match those things. So almost the pitch I think that we kind of landed on was, you remember those old VHS board games from the 90s?
Yeah.
We kind of want it to be a little like that, but instead of being like prescriptive, like, okay, you have to go to XYZ and fast forward to here. Instead, because we're in the digital age, it's just a ton of interesting tools that you can mix in, that you can feed to your players, and that they can then look back at the room, the game, the shared game space, and build on it in a fun kind of emergent storytelling kind of way.
Cameron, I don't trust anything that involves watching a VHS because of you. Because I don't want to turn into a horror pig monster.
And yet here we are.
And here we are. No, that's
worked out
so
fine for me.
freaking dope. I love that. I think that one of the moments that I always want, I've never pulled it off really, again, but I don't really run games in person anymore, but I want that like Always Sunny moment of a player like hitting the table or the board of stringy everything behind them being like, wait a minute, the conspiracy. If I look at this piece of evidence and this piece of evidence, and like they just like have that moment. I think this
Yeah.
is really cool because they get to like, if you're sending them a video clip, they can like scrub back through it and be like, wait, and then they like take a
Exactly.
screenshot, send it to the group Discord, and be like, no, right there. Like that is
Yeah.
something that gets me really excited, like to play with that at my table.
Yeah, jumping on the back of that, I'm super excited about the adventure is something that truly has come into focus as the backer campaign has been. So even in this first week, mostly Jack's vision of what it can be has really come into focus. And I'm pitching it as it's somewhere at that sweet spot of like that cabin in the woods style adventure
Yeah.
where like on your first playthrough maybe it's Merman, on your second one maybe it's very Betrayal at House on the Hill as far as
Modular.
its replayability. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to just intro how to do these things, but I think even more importantly to your point, Andrew, is that like seeing the monster can be cool. For me, it's the getting to the monster.
Yeah.
And unlike a video game, which almost unilaterally is on rails by its very nature, like it's within a
Right.
container most of the time. The cool thing about collaborative storytelling is that it's open-ended. How many times have your players been like, oh, the banana from the third session that they brought into the cave? And then you as the DM are like, yeah,
Yes, the
The
banana
banana,
was the
of
murderer
course.
the whole time.
right,
Yep.
right. And so having fuel to just enhance that experience and
Yeah.
allow people to pause and be like, there, and us just giving something that's not definitive, but is sufficiently weird
Yeah.
so that you can grab onto it. And yet, game to game, watch the same clip multiple times, and still you have different purposes for what it's for, as opposed to just and then swing and look, oh, it's Freddy Krueger, freak out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, and this
exactly.
is why I
No, and-
really
and
love.
showing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead. Go.
I was just saying, showing the monster, of course, in this context is it's going to be grainy,
You're not gonna see
scary
it.
footage.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're not
full
gonna see
wood
that.
crawlers, just
see a
shadows
tail.
of legs. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I mean, to
Claw.
use the example
Exactly.
of what was it, like Alien? You know, it's like you don't see the monster till. I mean, it's
An hour in at least.
Right.
Well, and those classic kind of movie vibes are really what we're trying to go
Mhm.
for when you were limited by your production. We're
Right.
kind of leaning
Yeah.
into that because we live in the age of generative images and overworked CGI artists.
Yep.
We're getting bored as a society at just really shiny things
We're
because
in a-
there's no
yeah.
weight to it. There's no realness there.
No.
And I think that era of filmmaking just like it's got
Yeah.
the vibes.
There's
It's
a
got
reason
it.
why it holds up.
Here's the
And here
thing.
we-
Oh, I was gonna say, like we see, like a lot of the times in trailers now, we see the monster,
You're like, good.
and it's just like, oh, cool. Like I have no anxiety, no fear. I'm not preparing myself while watching this movie to see the monster because I saw it in the trailer, and
Yeah.
Can I hijack this podcast for a second?
Go.
I want
Absolutely.
to air a grievance. Has almost,
I
only,
wouldn't have
like,
you on if I didn't expect that.
God,
on, tell
God
me,
bless
tell me.
you. So, instead of talking about our incredibly cool project on BackerKit that you should check out and fund immediately, I want to talk about for the next 2 hours, the last voyage of the Demeter. So this came out earlier this year, and here's my theory that somebody made an incredible screenplay, and there's no spoilers here because they spoil it in the advertising. They spoil it in the first 3 seconds of the
It's
movie
the reason I didn't see the movie.
because of Dracula. And so
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
like, oh, cool, it's Dracula. And like, oh my god, like the movie would be the spoiler alert now if you haven't seen Midnight Mass, because also
Oh.
Netflix does the same problem.
Yeah.
Like they're now advertising it as
The
vampires.
graphic, yeah.
Yeah, which is a waste of time because the light of Midnight Mass,
Yeah.
is knowing it's going to be creepy but not knowing why.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
4 episodes in, you're like, vampire. But in the Voyage of the Demeter,
God, I love that
they
show.
even have this ultra
I think it's
crappy intro where, because the Voyage of the Demeter, beat for beat, is Alien. It's awesome. Like you're on a boat, you don't know why people are dying, you're all stuck together. They're trying to deduce it. Except in the first 5 minutes, they're like, Dracula. And so the whole time you're like, is it Dracula? Is it Dracula? And then it's
It's probably
Dracula.
Dracula, huh?
And And the thing is, culturally, we know Dracula, so like we can fathom what to do about Dracula, even if they can't. And so the whole
Yeah.
movie's deflated. It is otherwise a textbook perfect found footage, or at least in the Demeter's case, epistolary format
Yeah.
of like looking back through the found evidence that leads up to the thing. Dude, I could one of my most we're doing these cool fireside chats around Voidstream and with different people significantly more talented than I am at telling stories. And one of the ones I'm looking most forward to is, are you familiar with Teeth RPG? It is a
No.
pack of Blades in the Dark, and it is Victoria. It is Regency era monster hunting in the British island,
That sounds
and
dope.
it is
Very cool.
it is one
It's
of the
very cool.
best looking, best written books I've ever seen. Just the monster design was instrumental in us running unaccompanied minors. And so just on a whim, I reached out to Marsh Davies, who co-wrote the book and did a lot of the artwork. And so he was like, "Oh, hell yes." And so he's talking with Emily Friedman, the good doctor, uh, actual play on Graffiti.
Yeah, that,
And
that's the word.
yeah, delete that segment. But yeah, and she also happens to be an Austinian scholar, and so I am just bananas. I am overwhelmed with enthusiasm about the conversation we're gonna have between the two of them and found footage, historical fiction. So like how Dracula is
Yeah.
wax tube recordings, letters is found transcripts. I digress. Anyway, Alien's pretty cool. What were
No,
we
I mean,
talking about?
I'm right there. Like, I think that when it comes to let's talk about the horror side of
Y-
this because that's completely relevant for the product you guys are putting out here. Horror is about not answering the question in so many ways, right? Like, help me out here, Mothership Pros. It's like you can survive, you can, solve, and what's the third one? Safe, right? It's like you don't get everything. You get to do some of that. And so
Yeah.
like that lack of satisfaction in a way, that unanswered question of what is, this horrific being that we're seeking out. Oh, we just saw a picture of its leg. It's like, oh, is that Sasquatch? Like, and those moments of just like wondering, that's why anybody watches horror. That's why anybody participates in it
Absolutely.
as a medium. And so like
Ah.
you're just giving more evocative, more tangible ways to do that than just the person running the game, the warden in this case, having to be deeply evocative with their words. Like I just used evocative twice because I'm
That's
lazy,
double vocative.
double vocative.
But yeah, I mean, like I think you've nailed it. And like the heart of found footage, the reason the SCP database works or creepypasta on Reddit is because you're looking at these stories through the pinhole of whatever the person
Yeah.
has decided to write about it. If
Yep.
you just had full high res, completely CG, like I think a lot of efforts toward illustrating or bringing the SCP database to life, which is a very cool thing that's happening all over the internet. A lot of them are disappointing because you're like, yeah, man, we know what Slender Man looks like. That's not the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And it's like what the bodies that Slender Man left behind, the people he chose not to hurt. What's going on with
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because like there's this there's several accounts everywhere on Reddit, YouTube, TikTok, whatever. But like where they animate some of the SCP stuff, and like I remember like reading it on Reddit and being like, "Oh, this is so good," and then like you watch the animation of it and you're like, "This
Have
is
I been wasting my
interesting."
time?
Yeah,
I'm not
this-
scared
this-
anymore.
This gave me too much.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, so I'm curious how you guys are walking the line there, because right, like again, especially let's say somebody's newer to this genre, they're more from the background of like D&D and stuff, and they're like, I can kill God.
Right.
Right, like I think that whenever you're trying to shift somebody from that to maybe more of this genre of horror and your especially Mothership, you're a person, you're not a god killer, right? Like you guys really have to walk the line of like, oh, it's just a big pig. I can kill a big pig. You have to be careful about not showing too much and continuing to tell that story. So what are like some of these ideas that you're mulling around? What are some examples of ways that you're obfuscating some of it, but teasing just a little bit?
Well, partially, it's system, right?
Yeah.
Making something specifically for Mothership versus making something for, like, we could potentially make something for a wider audience. the system buy-in is, of course, an important
Yeah.
part. It's funny. I actually have I've ran a lot of games for a lot of different types of people, and I find that when you take people from those zones of comfort from like D&D 5e or whatever, Pathfinder, and you put them in these places, they feel that lack of power. And I don't know about you, but almost every D&D player I've ever played with is still, despite having the power of a god in the palm of their hand, they're still scared to open doors. You know what I mean? Like
Oh my God, yes.
they're scared of the system punishing them for interacting with it. Whereas a horror game, a game that's focused on that aspect, is begging you to open that door.
You have to.
There's a quote, and I can't remember who it is. I think it's Colville, probably Colville. But your character, you don't own your character. Your character is a stolen car, so drive it like that because you're only going to have it for as long as you have it. And if you adapt that mentality, I think actually it's really easy to get there. Is kind of my point. The walk around point there is that is actually if you can convince players to
Monster
to
Herd.
not be afraid that their characters will die and to instead think of genre, think of tone, and understand that in a horror situation, people die and they're not going to make it, and that's part of the fun. And once you kind of get past that barrier, so I think that as far as like our modules and like this, like the game we're writing, that I think the system lends itself, and then kind of the tools around it.
The fact that Mothership is kind of a masterclass in that direction, I think is what you're getting at. And I'm just, having gotten into Mothership recently. Thank you, Cameron. Like I'm already just reading bits and pieces of it, being like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to steal this because it's smart and it's just
Yeah.
like I mean that's
Yeah,
it's super cool. I want to know
one of the best GM like advice sections of any book.
100%.
So good.
I also got upon Cameron's recommendation, I got
Cloud Empress.
Cloud Empress
Hey.
and was reading through that. Wow, the art, that's its own thing.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
like diving into it and getting familiar with how the way this system approaches, that whole feeling of like kind of powerlessness in the scope of the world that you're in. It's wild. As far as this project goes and what you guys are wanting to do with it, you've got a lot of stretch goals of kind of building out more and more of this library of assets. Like just speaking more practically, right? We've been very esoteric and idea based. Like what are people getting? Are they getting a Google Drive of, strategically labeled things, and then when I'm reading through a PDF it says go to video number 7? Like what's that interaction going to look like for someone?
I would say that the delivery mechanism is something that will probably evolve over time. So at least initially, it'll probably be some sort of mundane drive delivery, unless you got like a hard copy version of something. But that'll be itch or drive. Or
Yeah.
Moonbeam will also have a marketplace. Panic Table has a website that we're toying around with, like adding a marketplace to. So that kind of stuff on it. But on the less boring thing, it really comes down to in our adventure. Yeah, I think that the guides themselves, I would love to have that choose your own adventure throwback feeling, just a little bit. But yeah, it's also Jack's baby as far as indicating exactly how it will be navigated. Um, yeah, generally speaking, I think it needs to serve one of three purposes. It's can absolutely be used in world set dressing or props or clues. That's obviously key feature number one. Is that's just a cool multimedia handout. But I think the other two purposes are one that is to have fabulous prompts just for you to like sit back, take one of these, and then even though you may be using it as a set piece, also extrapolate from that all the world building inclusion you need to take from it. So you're like, oh, cool. All right, so the laboratory isn't named in the footage. Like, what is this place? What are they working on? We want to be like specific and yet indistinct at the same time with what's happening in the things.
Passive world building, right?
Yeah.
Where your assets lend a hand to you as opposed to you having to hunt down your assets to make them
Precisely.
work for you.
Yeah, so function 2 is just as a creative writing prompt, really.
Right.
And then function 3 is for creeps like me who I just want to sit back and watch these for fun. So like you could
Yeah.
just literally just watch
Yeah.
them where you're like, this is messed up. And the dream is that with or rather the goal is that these spread to where they are uh, some of them module specific. I would love to team up with, but a lot of our stretch goals are with really beloved third party publishers for Mothership
Mhm.
and other horror. We've got people like Christian Sorrell and Quadrazone of Warp Beyond Recognition. We've got Marco Serrano of Spicy Tuna Game. But we've got names like Banana Chan, like people who want to like hop on and write just some crazy stuff for us. I think this is a clean segue into talking about navigating these items, the tags, and I would love to tag Jack in to talk about those and how they work as both like search terms and safety tools.
Yeah. So to kind of back to your question, the idea is that you'll have all these assets. So if you're using them just on their own, you'll be able to look through them, and eventually we'll have them. I mean, in my brain, it's this beautiful, egalitarian little clickety clack system. But the tags on them will let you know this is security footage.
Yeah.
This is airport. This is body horror. This is addiction. So you have
Right.
tags on those videos that make it easy to sort through for the themes that reinforce in your game. So really, space station, mall. The
Right.
idea is that these tags, you wouldn't even have to really watch the videos,
Yeah.
because God willing, we have 40 of them by
Yeah.
the end of this thing. And instead of being like, I have to comb through all this stuff, you just easily sort through the tags. And those tags, like Cameron said, will help serve as safety tools, because if you know you can't do needles in your game because one of your players
Right.
put in one of their lines is needles, well, then you can know those videos aren't going to work for this adventure. And you could literally, like Cameron was saying, take these posits, put them together, and figure out what works for you. You could write an entire one shot around
That's
that,
awesome.
having nothing but those as your springboard. Now, as far as like our adventure that we're writing, the one at the SOS adventure, we have a couple of different thoughts about how we're going to get them. At this point we might have some more things down the pipeline, but at this point we only have one physical tier, and it is our most expensive tier, and it is our VHS box. Now,
Yeah,
it's not
that's
actually
super
VHS.
cool. It's a dice box / map / VHS box.
So it's not actually a VHS box.
Okay.
It's going to be slightly larger.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea is that like we wanted a cool delivery system for stuff. It's all about vibes. I want something cool on my shelf.
Yeah.
But me personally, as a person who runs lots of games, what I'm trying to design is a game that would be perfect to run in one night. You could run it longer if you want to, right? But what I love is something I can take in my hand, put down on someone's table. In my head, I see it. You fold it open. And maybe we're not using minis with this, and if we are, maybe we're just using things in our pockets or whatever. But being able to see those spaces in those rooms. When I ran games at the bar, I'd run Cyborg, and I'd get one of the official the official maps or whatever, grab a piece of cardboard, and then with Sharpie, put that down, and then slap index cards on it to cover them up, because it's just so helpful. And then we're thinking about there's a cassette that's involved that's going to have some interesting kind of atmospheric stuff on it, and a little mini adventure in the liner. We're not trying to get ahead of ourselves.
I
So I
get
don't
it.
want to say anything.
Well, we
so
talked
I
about
can't-
that before this call. We all like dreaming big on this stuff.
I don't know how well we are served not bringing up our stretch goals. So one thing you'll be seeing this week is doing a lot of unveiling. So I'm not fragile about that in a little bit. We're thrilled that one of them is we're working with the artist Behold, who did stuff for Orbital Blues and a number of other games, creating their soundtracks and stuff. Man, it would be really fun to talk to some of my favorite composers from horror films
Yeah.
about building ambiance, about setting the world. So I just shot Disaster Piece of It Follows and Bodies, Bodies, and Marcel the Shell and a few other films. I was like, hey, your work specifically on the video game Hyper Light Drifter changed my life.
I have a whole Hyper Light Drifter sword in a closet upstairs.
The
You just hit a
soundtrack
special
from that,
interest. Calm down.
yeah, like the song, the music alone is, I mean, you just hear it anyway. Yeah, I was like, "Hey, you want to just nerd out about horror composing for 1 hour?" And he's like, "Cool, yeah." So we're talking next Thursday with Disaster
That's
Piece
so
about
That's
dope.
so
So
wild, right?
cool.
right, right,
We had a lot of cool people.
yeah,
I mean, get that to Cameron's credit. Cameron's a cool guy. He's made some cool
He's
stuff,
all
so
right.
I can see why people are interested in talking to him. But it is still pretty neat to be
sure.
like, oh, uh, you know, it's clean, man. Never have to worry about it looking bad.
So
I don't either, but that's just because I have really good hair.
God, it's
Uh,
good. Every time I log on to talk to Jack, I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's
I think that when it comes to creating immersion in our games, I mean, like we've said, we have these tools, we have these things that start to narrow the experience to really what we want to curate. You know, that whether that's like what we talked about in session 0, or like a specific module that we're jumping on board with. I think that what you guys are creating is something that is really attractive because it's modular, and that it's not this singular experience, but it becomes like that database. And I don't really think I can't think of another product like that out there, and I just want a version of it for like each genre, because I've made fantasy props, the old dip it in coffee, make a tattered map for your friends of like a,
burn
like
the
that
edges for
burn the
some
edge. Yeah.
reason.
Why is it
yeah.
burnt? Was there a fire? Um
apparently, every map has always
every
been in
map.
a fire.
Yeah. And so it's like
It's just the outside.
I see like a lot of cool opportunity in this space, and not only just to like use this with Mothership, but to use it in whatever system you're running, and like going back to like the ethos of a lot of what Jack puts out, and creating system agnostic tools to just be silly and fun and make your games better. I don't know. It just gets me excited. So I just wanted to say, like, thanks guys for being here. Please check out Voidstream. It's incredible. It's funding right now. There are lots of exciting stretch goals for growing this project bigger, doing more videos, and making more fun things for you to play with in the future. Is there anything else you guys would like to say as we wrap up here?
A lot of fun conversations coming down the pike. None of them as fun and delightful as this one. Of course, thank you for having us. We're looking forward to crazy conversations with Disaster Piece, Banana Chan. We're having freaking Luke Gearing on to talk about the horror design. So we're flipping
Wow.
jazzed, fellas. That's all I'll
That's
say.
so
I'm getting to meet
dope.
a lot of heroes of mine, which is super duper neat.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna let Jack drive that one.
Oh man, that's not that's no pressure at all, right?
I don't
Right.
know.
Thank you so much for having us on.
It's been
super
more
duper
than a
fun.
pleasure. This has been awesome,
Absolutely.
guys.
Thanks for having us back, boys.
If you like what we're doing here at One Shots Tavern, you can head on over to oneshotstavern.com. 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 There
One
you
Shot
can
Tavern.
follow us on all of our socials. You can check out our Patreon, where you can see exclusive video of some of our interviews and gameplays, as well as check out our merch store, where you can get awesome things like our Magic Missile tee or our Coastal Mage Slayer long sleeve. Until we meet again, see you next week. Thank you for watching One Shots Tavern.